it may scale. So with us today, and I'd like for you to welcome Max Webster from Hivemind, James Andrew from Global Liquidity, and our host, Jeff Gallas. Jeff, come on up. Thank you very much.
Check, check.
Welcome. I hope everyone had a good lunch, and you're not feeling too sleepy. And if you do, we're going to wake you up with some exciting things about the future in which we live in and in which we will live in, I would say. It still says Bitcoin as the next internet, which was, I guess, the original title, and we broke it down a bit to talk more about, especially about Lightning as the next internet. And I think we should just start off with you guys introducing yourself. Sure. Yeah, you go first.
Yeah.
James.
Hey, I'm James Andrew, the CEO and technical director at Global Liquidity, where we've built a social multiplayer game, Lightning native, based around simulated trading, and that's me.
Hello, everyone. You guys can hear me? Good. My name is Max Webster. I am the founder of a new fund called Hivemind Ventures. We invest in early stage Bitcoin and Lightning startups focused on scaling Bitcoin. So excited to be here.
So I guess the central question is here, how can the Lightning Network maybe improve or add something on the internet as we know it today, and maybe learn out of the mistakes or the developments that got us to where we are today regarding the internet? When we were discussing this earlier, we had like this open vision of a decentralized internet some decades ago, and right now it looks like most people are just using centralized services, the big 4 or 5 or whatever, you all know them. So I know you have but we all have big hopes for actually the Lightning Network on furthering decentralization, or maybe like even working out some kinks of the current internet, if you will. So, I mean, you have a thesis as a VC. So tell us about that. Like, how do you operate on that thesis?
Yeah, so my thesis is essentially that in a decade's time, the largest companies in communications and consumer internet, finance, and energy are all Bitcoin companies. And they're all going to plug into the Bitcoin protocol at different layers of abstraction. Now, I'm primarily focused on how the Lightning Network or Bitcoin Lightning Network are going to scale vertically. And I know James is going to go more into this, but in the same way that we saw TCP/IP all the way up to application layers like HTTP. There's also alternatives where you have things like side chains, like Liquid, or even other blockchains that perhaps could plug into Bitcoin. And then there's an idea of even diagonal scaling, which is, could you have the Lightning Network kind of being the interplug point for all of these different things? I think they're all interesting questions. I'm primarily focused on the vertical scaling question, with Lightning Network being that key second layer on top of Bitcoin. But just to go through the points of my thesis, I think obviously Bitcoin and Lightning, most people here believe Bitcoin is money. I think Lightning as a payment network obviously is huge, right? I believe that the Lightning Network is going to disrupt all the closed payment networks, ACH, SWIFT, Visa, MasterCard, all dead in the water. Lightning is going to eat them all. Yeah, fuck yeah. And that's a big deal because, we're here in El Salvador where 70% of the population was unbanked. I lived in Mexico for many years. Half the country there is unbanked. So I think for emerging markets, that's huge. Also for new geographies of the mind, the Metaverse, those payments are going to be massive there. So I think we can all agree Lightning is going to be massive for this. Even if that's all it ever does, this is a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity. I pinch myself for being an investor at this time in that opportunity. But the second question is, could it scale to also decentralized communications? Now, I think what's really interesting to me is that, we talked a bit about how most of our services today are run in the cloud, but it's not really a cloud. It's like Amazon, it's Google, it's Microsoft, that's it. And so what I'm interested in is with Lightning nodes, you not only have the ability to route payments, but you also have with that new forms of identity. You have a new social graph, let's call it. And with a social graph where your node is an identity and it has reputation based on real liquidity, real Bitcoin, real capital that is staked, that's a first brand new primitive for human history, right? And so I think there's going to be all kinds of interesting services, and we'll talk more about some of this in the panel today, that get built on top of the Lightning Network and the node as identity, stuff like decentralized storage, computation, bandwidth. One of my crazy ideas that I'm most excited about, and a hat tip to my boy Ryan Gentry in the audience, who's been saying this far longer than I have, and Drew Bansel, who's not here, but who basically called all of this in 2018 is just like correct, is that I think where we're going is to what I call the Bitcoin Ouroboros, or the snake that eats itself, right? And what I mean by this is we have the opportunity with a peer-to-peer payment network and identity with Lightning to incentivize people to build a peer-to-peer mesh network. And once you have a peer-to-peer mesh network, you have Bitcoin hosting Lightning, hosting the mesh, which one day will host Bitcoin. Yeah, that's the big one for you guys. So I think that's a ways off. I think we're a ways to get there. One caveat I want to mention, there's been some debate about, hey, but if we do all this other data, isn't that going to clog the Lightning Network? I think it's a very good point. I agree. Lightning is primarily for payments. I'm more interested today in how companies like Impervious are already experimenting with using node-to-node lookup for off-key data transfer and using the Lightning as the identity. I think that's more feasible short-term, but long-term, who knows? I think free market will sort itself out. Only rational economic activity will be there. And the last thing, just very quickly, is on the energy point. This one we could have a whole nother conversation. But in the future, I think every energy contract is a Bitcoin smart contract settled in Lightning. And one day, your kids' kids will learn about the Satoshi as a unit of energy, just like the kilowatt hour or the joule. Second big thought for the day. That's another topic, but that's where we're headed.
Great. So the future looks Lightning for you. How about the present? Like, what do you see happening right now that we would say this is a good start? And what do you see? Like, and what gives you kind of sort of a good outlook of what we're building today?
How many people here know about PlebNet? Wow. Is anyone on PlebNet in here? All right, this is amazing. So I think that, let me just start and I'll back up to give some background, but I think that PlebNet is one of the most important things happening on the planet right now. And here's why. What PlebNet is, first off, is a bunch of people connecting their Lightning nodes and cooperating in ways that benefit both themselves and the network as a whole. I call it a Lightning subnet. Now let me back up for a minute. I like to say to people that Bitcoin is actually a layer 7 protocol. Who knows what I mean by that? Anyone? Any network engineers in here, right? All right. We call Bitcoin a layer 1. But really, Bitcoin is peer-to-peer networking software. And there is a 7-layer model that has been in existence for some 30 or more years that is called the OSI model that has hardware at the bottom. You know, we've all heard of TCP/IP. That slash is because it's on different layers. And then up at the top is the application layer. So for 40 years, we've been building the internet in layers. So when Bitcoin comes around, it's actually on layer 7. It is. And so Lightning is a layer on top of Bitcoin, and that only makes sense. So given we've had 7 layers and now an 8th in the sense of Lightning, doesn't it make sense there might be more layers? And so what I see happening with PlebNet that's very interesting is if you look at PlebNet, some people have made graphs of it. You see these graphs of all these Lightning channels that have been established by known people. A lot of this has taken place on Clubhouse, where people have said, hey, let's make a Clubhouse room and teach each other how to set up these Lightning nodes. The umbrella effect, as you call it, has helped. It's real easy now. But what I see there, which right now is a network for routing payments, is much more. Because what you have is a visible network of trust. You see all of these connections, and what these are, these Lightning channels that have been established for a long time, I see that these nodes, these people or pseudo nodes, trust one another. Why is that important? Because I believe that what we're going to see is that because this network of trust is there, it's going to soon be possible to build other services on top of this network and other networks like it other than just payment routing. So if we have Bitcoin mining is what you call layer 1 mining, if you might call routing payments and charging sats for it layer 2 mining, and people are earning sats by routing payments, I think we're going to see a whole world of what you might call layer 3 mining. And what I mean by that is, how big of a stretch is it? We've all seen the Umbrella App Store with new apps coming out, and Raspberry Blitz is doing things in that space too, of course. But we see all this proliferation of new things other than just payment routing happening, and I think that there will, this is sort of a call to action to say build this, that once you have a generalized way of charging sats for other things, people are going to run for that because the incentive model will kick in. For example, an obvious low-hanging fruit I would love for someone to work on is tying IPFS into Lightning so that people could pin content and charge sats for pinning content. And once that's done, now all of a sudden people will go out and buy banks of hard drives so that they could store content. And you know what? That content is not on Amazon servers, it's on our servers, and that's good for us. Beyond this, I can imagine a situation where we might run Kubernetes clusters on PlebNet, to where we could host our own Docker containers, paying with sats for the running of this software. Why can I do that? Because I trust this network. And I think this is important for the future of humanity, really, lest we all get stuck in Mark Zuckerberg's Meta and Jeff Bezos's AWS. Right now, all of our code is running on their servers. And so I see that what's happening with Lightning is more important than most people working with Lightning even now yet realize.
So,
Fuck yeah.
you were giving some outlooks like of what you would like to see. What are some projects that you're actually like seeing being developed right now, like as of today?
Projects on Lightning that I'm excited about right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's so much, and I feel like we're just kind of hitting an inflection point. I wrote an article recently called Why Lightning, Why Now? If you haven't checked it out, highly recommend reading it. The amount of growth that we're seeing in liquidity, users, nodes, channels, and developers is going vertical, and I believe that trend is going to continue a lot over the next year. I think we're going to transition to like a Bitcoin Lightning standard way faster than people realize, so I'm here for that. In terms of projects I'm excited about, obviously, we mentioned the home nodes like Raspberry Blitz, Umbrel, which I'm a very big fan of. I think the app store that they're building in there, people are, as you just mentioned, they're just starting to realize how big of a deal that is. Because today when you have a social network and you're like, hey, we're opening channels to each other, it's some economic activity, it's a lot of fun. But once you can start saying, hey, wait a second, I can run my distributed file storage on here, and oh, by the way, I can charge and make some like real revenue for doing that, that starts getting pretty interesting. And so I think that's the early step, perhaps what I'm most excited about. Some other projects I'm super stoked on, obviously, payments companies, Galloy, I think what they're doing for banking, the unbanked, and doing community signatures is absolutely huge. I think there's a lot of cool stuff happening with Bitcoin and the Metaverse, projects like obviously ZBD, Guilds, which is a new company I'm looking into, it's pretty cool. I think on this next layer 3, the OGs in the space, got to give a shout out to Sphinx. They were one of the first ones to see this overlay network possibility. Impervious has seen this overlay network possibility. I think what Roy has done with Breeze and streaming of sats for content and what he's planning to do with other peer-to-peer chat in there is absolutely exciting. And then new projects. There's some guys, shout out, I think I saw the Ambos guys in the audience there. What they're doing is super cool, indexing the network. Obviously, Lightning Labs is the OG here and building what makes it all possible. I'm seeing some distributed storage, or not distributed, self-hosted storage, Lightning payments, a project called Agora I like. I just think the amount of innovation is going vertical.
So one topic you mentioned, and which might be pretty hard right now, is the Metaverse. And we talked about this earlier. You're pretty excited about sort of a self-hosted Metaverse. Yeah. What's your vision for that? Like, how does it work, and how does it work with Lightning Network Layer 2 or Layer 3? Yeah.
Okay, the Metaverse is a big hot buzzword. I've been thinking about it for a while. In 2018, I gave a talk at World Blockchain Forum called All Your Fiat Are Belong to Us, the End of Money as We Know It, and the Soon Coming Economy of the Metaverse. And the idea here is that what we're seeing in the Metaverse, it's if you look at where the internet is going, that is the metaverse, meaning it's going to be sort of an overlay on this world that exists in many different forms. And the current architecture of everything being centralized in these big cloud systems just doesn't work. It doesn't scale for the kind of computation needs that metaverse type experiences have. And in case anyone's seen the Meta thing, Mark Zuckerberg's thing, that's not the metaverse to me. The metaverse, that is sort of a Disney World destination in the metaverse. The metaverse is more about the digital world being overlaid on the real world in new ways. And I see that what we have happening here with Lightning and these layer 3s on it is actually architecturally fitting for the computational and communication requirements of the metaverse, where we need edge computation. And even apart from all of the other reasons why we don't want to be all beholden to AWS and Meta, just architecturally, we need computation to be distributed around the world. George Gilder talks about this in his book called Life After Google, which is really interesting, where he says he thinks that the Google model has painted the world into a corner where we need to like build these huge industrial buildings to do all of our computation. Well, now there's going to be an alternative, because free market economics will kick in and people will say, wait a minute, I can actually go out, instead of just buying GPUs to mine, I can buy CPUs or GPUs to provide compute services, AI, even 3D real-time rendering for AR and VR context. This can be done all over the world, and it can be done by individuals who are charging in sats for this. And so I think that Lightning and the layer 3s are the key to what you might call the open metaverse, which is the thing that I think most people in this room want, and not Mark Zuckerberg's Meta.
Right. Coming back sort of to look at the reality again, this it sounds really super exciting, but no, I mean, we're here at Adopting Bitcoin, and everybody has been out and like trying the actual implementation of stuff we've been working on for years, and which like most of us have experienced in a stable and reliable way. And now we see it scale up to millions, and we see there's some challenges, and not everything is working as maybe hoped for. So what I like from running your home node, which might still be something that's more of a niche, like what's needed to scale it up to being able to, for everyone to run their own node, even the non-technical people, or like, what, do you have like a vision for that? Like what needs to happen on the hardware side?
Yeah. So I think, so the question of like, will everyone run their own node ever? I don't know. I think a lot more people will run nodes than currently do. And I think the market for that is going to grow much bigger than we think, much faster. So I think the first thing to understand is, why are people running nodes today? One criticism you might offer to some of what we're talking about is, well, you could have run, a lot of these peer-to-peer network nodes before, right? You could have run a Tor node, you could have run a Matrix node, you could have run any of these nodes, but you didn't, right? But you know what? You are running a Lightning node. Why? And I think it comes down to, I think there's many factors, but the economic incentive is key, right? If Lightning, in a sense, is an incentivized Tor, if you run a Tor node, you only take on risk. So unless you're super into civil liberties, why would you do that? If you run a Lightning node, all of a sudden now you get some routing fees and the promise of more, and more importantly, as James is saying, you get a pathway eventually to making even more economic revenues once you can offer other services, or frankly just offer your own personal services from your node as your identity, tied into that economic layer sort of reputation. So what's needed to make this thing go mainstream? Well, I think the ability to earn in other ways meaningful revenue from things like computation and storage, I think that's what's going to make it go huge. But I also wouldn't underestimate just like, it's fun right now. For the first time since I've been in Bitcoin for the last 5 years, I'm seeing people having fun again, like really just experimenting, and that's awesome to see. I think that's been a big driver with PlebNet as well. And then I think we also need some technological breakthroughs, like how do you make it super easy to run a node in your browser? How do you eventually run a node on your phone? I think those things are going to make it a lot easier as well.
Okay. And maybe a question related to what you said earlier as well, like as an outlook. You mentioned sort of web of trust that PlebNet provides. Do you see that? Can it sort of scale in the way we have it right now, or how could you envision a sort of trustless peer-to-peer network on a larger scale, where not everybody talks to each other for a significant amount of time, but where we have like some automated or sort of institutionalized trustless mechanisms?
I will leave those details to those architecting the actual engineering of it. I've been talking to a lot of people about that, but let me answer it sort of orthogonally. What I think that needs to be developed is on top of Lightning now is a system of reputation and trust that builds up over time, sort of a Bayesian trust model that needs to be. This is a protocol that I would, again, I'm kind of talking speculatively because these things don't exist. Please build them. But what I see is that you have these nodes that have some sense of trust already, because you see that there are channels established between the nodes. But once these nodes provide other services, what I would love to see be developed is some sort of a protocol whereby every node, possibly using the existing gossip protocol, can rank every node it interacts with, staking a few sats on the performance of that node, saying this node performed as expected, or this node didn't perform as expected. And equally as important, this node is good at reporting the trustworthiness of other nodes. So there needs to be this new protocol whereby trust can be established through the nodes reporting one to another regarding how these nodes are fulfilling the promises that they are putting out there, whether it be for routing payments, storing files, or routing communication, anything like that. So I think that that's the basic idea.
Okay, great. I think we wanted to take some questions from the audience if anybody has questions or remarks. Maybe share what you're excited about in that context we just talked about, or if you're working on any of these specific projects, I think we'd be interested. I've seen, you showed us your game earlier, which was also pretty cool because you have actually implemented Lightning into like a trading game, which is competitive between multiple people, and you can get paid. You pay into it in Lightning and pay out of it in Lightning, so it's a completely sort of it's a
in-game Lightning. Ask me to see it later. I wasn't even planning to talk about it. I was just going to
mention because I thought
we have a fully in-game Lightning payment system.
So yeah, any questions at this point? Otherwise, I think we're already. Oh, you have one. Okay, well, I think you're going to get a mic from somebody. Oh, it's coming over there, I think. Oh.
Yeah, that's good.
Yep.
Not a big question, but I just wanted to ask more about the game and like how that works. It's kind of fascinating to me. I've never heard about it. So, like, what can you give me like a 1-minute like explanation rundown on like what exactly it is and how it works?
Yeah, ask to see me on the iPad, but I've got a game based upon high-speed trading done in 3D. It's like Guitar Hero for trading, and I tried to shop it out to the exchanges. They weren't having it, so I turned it into a game and monetized it with Lightning. So now you pay in and out with Lightning and do competitive trading in a social context. That's
awesome.
Another topic.
Sounds awesome. Thanks.
It's cool.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to come to you. It's probably quicker. This is the last question.
So regarding business models for the Lightning applications that are built on top of Lightning, how do you see this happening? So there's like a lot of interactions between different Lightning applications. So who is going? Do you see like something like negotiating the cut for each Lightning application, or how do you see like the interaction between different Lightning applications? Because it's like maybe the wallet sends the Satoshi around through an application, and it goes through another application, and I don't know if you see like how the business models are going to work around.
So just to make sure I understand the question, you're saying like at a point where there's all kinds of different Lightning apps, how do they all interoperate? Okay. So, I mean, the beautiful thing about Bitcoin and by extension Lightning is that it's open. And I think that's the, like, if you had to sum up why this whole thing is important, it's open, right? Which means anyone can build on top of it and compete and come up with new ideas. I think in the far future, everything is going to speak Lightning, right? You as a human and all the different things that you use, you're going to speak Lightning. But all of your IoT devices, your car, your solar panels, you know, all of that is going to speak Lightning as well. To give you one very concrete example, I view a world where everyone has solar on their roof, an inverter with an ASIC miner in there, and as you produce energy in real time, you say, hey, I have an electron, do I sell it to the grid? Do I mine it? Do I store it? Or do I use it here at my house? And I think that's going to extend into all kinds of different applications for Lightning, right? Once you have real markets for compute, then you say, hey, I've got this extra electron or Satoshi. Do I use it right now, or do I use the services that I have or the hardware at my house to maximize monetization through compute, through storage? Do I, see that by locking my sats up in pool from Lightning Labs, I'm going to get a higher yield there? I think because they're all open, they'll all speak with each other, and that's like where that goes. I have no idea. That's the
one
beauty
final
thing.
comment. Just one final comment, quick. I was just telling Jeff that what he's doing, for instance, with Raspberry Blitz. Right now, these Raspberry Blitzes, which are amazing, are there for routing payments. But what I see them potentially turning into eventually is like the next generation Linksys Wi-Fi router. Everyone has a Linksys Wi-Fi router at home, and you connect it, and it connects to all of your resources. But imagine if you have something like this that you plug in to your local network, and it says, "This is your resources. How would you like to monetize them?" Right? So so there's an example of the way that a piece of hardware could eventually make it in everyone's house, and now they're just earning sats from their idle resources, things like that.
Great. I think that's a pretty cool vision, actually. Like I was.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah. I'm hoping we should become like the Raspberry Blitz and Umbrella. They eventually become obsolete because all routers do have that functionality.
You might be them, though.
Oh, we might be them, yeah. I mean, of course, think big, right? Well, in any case, thank you very much for your insights and your visions, and I hope we will find us here. We can talk a bit more, and thank you.
Awesome, thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, guys.